But I'm going to talk even more about me. This will be painful for the ladies because they're used to hearing men speaking about themselves. So I'm not going to break the mold, I'm going to continue. I come from Pune. And if you are from Pune, you don't expect to see anyone before 8 o'clock in any public gathering. It simply doesn't happen. So people come late. And I'm very happy to see people come in for a conference that early in the morning. So, a little bit. So I'm the first independent Scrum coach in India. So I started in 2006 coaching teams. Now I'm very particular about this. I'm a Scrum coach. I'm not an Agile coach. We in this industry are, on the whole, rather unfit. Most of us take the lift to go even to the first floor or the second floor. Yeah, you don't like to hear it, but it's true, right? So if someone introduces himself or herself as an Agile coach, the question you should ask, and we have just heard Nitesh saying that there's a disconnect between Agile coaching and the practitioners. A good question you can ask to an Agile coach is, can you touch the soles of your feet with the palms of your hands without bending your knees? And you saw the picture that Saurabh put up, that old lady putting her leg up like that. I can't even think of doing this, right? And I think most of you will not be able to even think of doing this sort of thing. So that is the question to ask. And if the person says, no, I can't, well, you're not an Agile coach. And the reason why this is important is, I'm sure this thing called agility or this Agile methodologies confuse a lot of people, not just to some extent, many of you, but also your managers, your organizations. It confuses. And like Saurabh mentioned earlier, it's a lot of hype. There's a lot of hype. So I'm going to be particular. If at all I have to describe myself as a coach, it would be a Scrum coach, or I'll say a software development consultant. So helps you with software development. So that's who I am. I write a blog here, over here, and this is about really doing Scrum well. So it's about how to do Scrum well. And this talk is something about Scrum But. That's what I'm going to talk about. How many of you have heard of Scrum But? Show of hands. Okay. So treat for a lot of you, because it may surprise you. Saurabh has said a lot of correct things. In fact, everything he has said, except one point, is absolutely correct. It is not nice for someone to contradict an earlier speaker, but I'm sure he'll take it with good grace. The most popular methodology is not Scrum, but Scrum But. Okay? We'll tell you what Scrum But is. Scrum But is basically when people say, we do Scrum, but we don't have a product owner. We do Scrum, but we don't do stand-ups. We do Scrum, but we don't deliver software at the end of the sprint. We do Scrum, but our project manager tells us what to do. So that's Scrum But. The most popular methodology is Scrum But. So I'm going to teach you about Scrum But. No, not really. I'm going to tell you why it's such a bad idea. Because people don't understand why it is such a bad idea, so they continue doing Scrum But. What they do is use new jargon. As an industry, we're great with jargon. We like to use jargon. We're Agile. Sounds nice, right? It doesn't sound nice to say, we are hippopotamus. We're Agile. So let's see what Scrum But is. So very, very quickly, what do you think would be the reason why, in spite of Scrum being around for such long time and extreme programming being around for so long, why are most projects still struggling? why are we still not having the kind of success rates we would like to see? So a company like Flipkart, a company like Google, they are new companies. They could, they had the advantage of actually picking up the best and running with it at the time they started. Companies like Amazon, also true. But what about companies that have been around for a long time? What do? They need to change, right? And what is the easiest way to change? They recognize, all these companies recognize they need to change. What is the easiest way to change? I think, sorry? Changing senior man. Okay, that's a good one. So there's actually a book like that, Managing Change or Changing Managers. Yeah, that's a good one. But we find how hard it is not to say because one of the things we look for managers is track record, and there's if you're done well previously, it is very easy to fall into the trap that you can do well ahead. Yes, you can. Your previous success help you succeed in the future, but you need to be very mindful, very thoughtful that everything that you did previously to succeed may not exactly be the same things that help you succeed in the future. In fact, they may sometimes even stop you from being successful. If you recognize this and change, that's okay. So that's fair enough. But even many of you, individually, I think if you're at a certain stage in your life, in your career, you would like to change. I'd like to change. I'd like to be a fitter person. I know I look okay, but I'm not particularly fit. I'd like to be able to read more, be more knowledgeable. I'd like to do certain things in my consulting. I'd like to change. Maybe you'd like to change. As long as we are in our comfort zone, as long as we are doing things and things are going okay, we do not change. And any change we make is cosmetic. So what these companies have done is they want to be agile. So they use the jargon. Okay? Unfortunately, it can actually make things worse. How? You'll say it's the same thing. Well, it is simple. Because you have raised the bar from your customer end. You have raised the bar from other stakeholders in terms of what you can and your capabilities. You've changed that. But in terms of your execution, you've not changed. You're using jargon. All right? So a couple of things that people need to understand about what is the problem that Scrum is solving before. So we need to spend a little bit of time understanding Scrum a little bit. How many people have heard of Scrum or know something basic about Scrum? Show of hands, please. Pretty much big crowd, okay? So, first of all, what is the problem that Scrum is solving? So it's basically two problems Scrum is solving. It's solving the waterfall. It's trying to break the waterfall. By the way, Scrum is not the only methodology. Extreme programming, which is a fantastic way of working, also solves the waterfall problem. And the other thing is poor project management practices. Now, people confuse them. They think project management means waterfall. No, it doesn't. They're different things. So to that extent, even PMI is useful. However, PMI's project management and the kind of things they espouse have their own set of problems. There have been a lot of criticisms about that as well. However, if you look at waterfall, well, Saurav has explained and we can all see this, there's a huge problem in terms of what you say you want so many months ago, and by the time you get it, you may not, a lot of time has passed, a lot of things have changed, and you're not able to absorb all the change in the environment outside and react to it in time. There's another problem. All this is assuming that what you said earlier is coming out perfectly at the end. It doesn't. We make mistakes. Human beings make many mistakes. And one of the biggest mistakes we make is thinking that we don't make many mistakes. If you go and look in your projects, almost every project makes a lot of mistakes. A poor project management process does not account for this. The waterfall does not account for this. It doesn't account for mistakes being made sufficiently well. Okay? And it's all in our minds and attitudes. So I'm going to, okay, not a perfect coloring. I mean, yes, it's a bit clashing. But just to show you, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Scrum. Bear with me. The people who know it, please bear with me. It'll only take 2 minutes. So I'm not going to tell you the details of the process. I'm just going to tell you the idea. It is very simple. It starts off somewhere here. There's a bunch of, what are these things? Team members, very good. You know, project managers have a different name for team members. Resources. So they say resources. And if you call a project manager a resource, they get offended. It's very strange. So these are a set of people. They commit. They commit based on a time box. They commit to doing something, to delivering something based on a time box. What's a time box? Okay, 1 to 4 weeks. Okay, you're giving me a good answer, but it's a fixed time. It doesn't stretch. Einstein doesn't come into picture. Yeah? So there's no time dilation here. And there's no IST. There's no Indian stretchable time here. Yeah? So 2 weeks is 2 weeks, right? So they commit based on the time box, and at the end they deliver something hopefully meaningful, but particularly if you want to do it well, if you want to do Scrum well, it basically means a piece of working software that meets a standard definition of done. It has to be well done. Yeah? It can be consumed at the end, potentially. It can be consumed by customers if you deliver over there. Yeah? So they deliver something there. They make a commitment to deliver something there. And at the end of the time box, that delivery is done. And this is when people have to inspect it. They look at it. Different perspectives. Some people look at it in terms of quality. Some people are looking at it in terms of features, in terms of whether this is useful to us or not, and they provide feedback. So that's inspect. Yeah. So people look at what's been done and give feedback and evaluate it even. Accept, reject, all these things happen around this time. And based on the information of real software, working software that is delivered, you adapt. You make some changes for the future. If you're messed up and done badly, you adapt. Yeah? You adapt and you do the cycle again. So this is basically the essence of Scrum. The couple of things to note is there's a time box, so a fixed period of time, and then you do an inspect and adapt. And the other thing that I've not mentioned so far is there is something here which is not showing very well. It says no changes. We'll discuss no changes in a minute. It says no changes. Yeah. Now this seems very contradictory. We'll come to that. And it's very painful. This no changes is often very painful. Now, this is the essence of Scrum. Now, there's something about Scrum which is very different from many of the other methodologies. If you look at a CMMI, which is not really a methodology, or if you look at XP or something like lean development or feature-driven development, the thing about Scrum that we really need to be clear about is Scrum is something that really can't be customized. Now, this sounds very radical. It sounds even unrealistic. Scrum is actually a rigid framework. It is not a flexible framework. It's a rigid framework that enables flexibility. Okay? And people don't understand this, and that's why they get into Scrum bug. So let me tell you a true personal story. This is 2 years ago. There's a nice park close to my house. And one day, so I used to play badminton 10 years ago. Yeah? So one day I thought, yeah, I need to get fit. This life is rubbish. I can't even take stairs to the 4th floor. So I need to get fit. So what did I do? I went to the park and I started jogging. It's got a 500-meter perimeter, and I jogged, that's half a kilometer. And I did 500 meter. I was a bit out of breath, but it's okay. I kept going. Another 500 meter, more out of breath. I took a little bit of water, no problem, kept going. I jogged for 1.5 kilometers. So this is after a gap of more than 7 years of not doing any physical activity. At the end of it, I was completely out of breath. I sat down and I recovered. And I went home. So far, so good. So I was very happy. Yeah, not bad. Okay, then I went home and sat down. Things are paining. A little bit of pain here, there. I made a mistake of going to sleep. And when I woke up the next day, everything was paining. So the conclusion I made, jogging is bad for health. So that's what happens when people try to do Scrum. They actually try to do it correctly, they get pain. And then they conclude that jogging is bad for health. Well, it is painful because currently your capabilities and health of being able to do it is poor. So if you suddenly start doing this, it will be painful. And that is the whole reason why we get into Scrum But. So let me define Scrum But. So on one hand, I'm saying things like Scrum can't be customized, and we need to know whether how do we know whether we need to do it well or not? In fact, Saurabh suggested what is right for me. Which Agile methodology is right for me? It's a very complex question. It's very difficult. And one of the things he said is in spirit, and that's very correct. But for most of us, it is very difficult to decide and know the spirit unless you've been lucky to have actually worked in some of those projects. There isn't. If you look at most of the mature Western democracies, they have elections within the party. Well, they may not be running at the same standard as the national elections, but they do have it. So what we're saying here is, how do we know whether we're doing Scrum or Scrum But, and where can we customize it? So first of all, it cannot be customized, but you would have to adopt your environment to fit into Scrum, not the other way around. So if I want to get fitter, I have to slowly build up my capability and learn to jog 2 kilometers every day comfortably. Not say that, oh, I can't jog, so jogging is a bad idea. Yeah. So what is Scrum But? So a couple of things. The very first thing is, if you're breaking something called the no change rule, you are probably going to Scrum But. What is the no change? We have seen, if you slide earlier, do the inspect and adapt on the time box, there's a no change there. But Scrum is supposed to handle change. So what is this no change rule? Well, Scrum is supposed to handle change over a project, over many sprints. But during a sprint, you want to keep this constant. And you want to keep this constant because you want an island of stability. You want an island of stability where you actually can target something and do it. And you don't want a moving target. So the no change rule actually consists of 3 things. You shouldn't change the team. You shouldn't change the goal of the sprint. And you shouldn't change the date. No stretching the date backwards and forwards. Yeah. So these are the 3 things you need to. If you break this, you're doing Scrum But. There's one more thing. This is not about democracy. This is about respecting other people and their abilities. You want the team to commit freely. When you start the sprint, You want the team to commit freely to what they think they can do. If you break this and if you push things on them, that's a bad idea. Yeah? Now, this is a little hard for you to understand, but we all tend to think that pressure is a good thing. Both the answers, it is a good or a bad thing, both are wrong because it depends on the type of pressure and the amount of pressure. And it's intangible. We cannot measure it. So your choice is to so you can have some manager or an executive put pressure on people. When do you think a manager puts pressure on other people? When he is under pressure, he or she is under pressure. That's going to happen, right? When is your judgment poor? When you're under pressure. When we say pressure is good, people perform if their pressure is good. When you're playing sports, why do you put the other team under pressure? Yeah. So you don't say, oh, they're going to perform well if you put them under pressure. So let's not put pressure. You don't do that. You're going to put them under pressure because you know they're going to make mistakes. When a manager puts pressure on people, they're going to make mistakes. Their whole behavior is going to change in terms of trying to hide mistakes as late as they can and trying to blame other people. So this thing happens. So pressure is a bad thing. So if you don't allow people to commit freely, you're having a very tough time. And this tough time comes later, and it actually degenerates into something called a death march. Have people heard of a death march? In fact, most of the industry is in a death march. Yeah, this is maybe news for you. So we all say that, we are very busy and we are highly stressed and so on, but most of the projects, it's okay, if one of your projects gets cancelled, the world is not going to notice. So we need to do this. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a little more depth into what happens if you change, let's say, the team. If you change the team members, let's say we change the team members. So we've seen the cycle. Team commits, they need to deliver something